Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8.6. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for many more great Hearts of Iron videos. They say to do that up front in YouTube school, so gotta say it. If you don't subscribe, you're going to miss out on lots and lots of things. And why am I still invading or going to a province that's already taken by Japan? So we're going to stop that. They're going there. Let's go to this province down that way. That is forest as opposed to jungle. Okay, we've got fighter bomber prototypes. Have advanced. And we're going to stop those. Oh, and something else is advanced as well. Too big to display. Oh, short barrel tanks. Or tank guns. Okay, well, that wasn't what was keeping us from going forward. Didn't think it was. I think maybe extra wide tracks or some other technology here. Side shield armor. Yeah, that would be good. And more on the air front. You just keep seeing all the red, you know, the slower speed and things like that that sort of hesitate me from building some of those. Not to say that they're not worth it. The sort of the idea here is, okay, well, interceptor fighters, air attack improves, but it reduces range. Okay, speed, that bothers me a little bit more, so don't know about that. High caliber ammunition, hard attack, so this is for going after for CAS. It was just, if we were just looking at CAS, I'd be more inclined to do it. And probably, and maybe the math, if you worked it out, really you should do it, but because I'm not immediately stripping the air clean of enemies, sort of why I don't do it. Or are we doing all the carriers are still? Okay, well. Let's delete that. Okay, I hope this works out. Yes, good, it seems to have. Got a little flash down there notifying me that one game company or another was doing a live stream, but notified through Steam. And I happen to have Steam still open, and I've really got to effing hate all of that kind of stuff. This is not a... My copy of Hearts of Iron 3 is not a Steam game. So it doesn't have the little pop-up stuff in the bottom that some of the others do. But I don't mind that so much, even if it's recorded to say, hey, somebody who's friended me on Steam is playing something else. Okay, that's fine. But when it this or other things comes up and thinks it needs to take over whatever I'm doing, and give me a notice. Even if I've signed up for that notice. I'm not saying they shouldn't give me the notice, but the idea that it pulls me out of whatever I'm doing to give me that notice. I've really, partially because I'm recording, but there are other reasons as well we'll do that. I've really come to hate that. Really vehemently hate that. More than just recording. You want, if it's fine, and see, the notice is fine is because it's in the background, you know, behind this, and so when I either quit this or tab out to see what else is going on, fine, yeah, I want the notice, and maybe by the time I do that it'll be too late, but hey, if I'm asleep and the notice shows up, I'll still be too late. You know, it's that sort of thing, so. And there are a few of you on Steam who have friended me. There is a limit, but I'm happy to have anybody who wants to friend me there. Don't feel bad if I don't, even if it sort of shows that I'm actively playing or something and I'm not responding to you. That's just because I'm busy. Not even necessarily busy making a video, just I'm busy. You know, if I'm playing particularly like a first-person shooter, hey, I'm doing that. I'm not. You know, wanting to talk to you right now. Not that I don't want to talk to you. Okay, infantry, anti-tank weapons. Which, if I understand correctly, yes, we've opened up regular light infantry, special forces branch, which a bunch of other stuff. So we're going to. But I was waiting for that, but I did sign the technologies because I get impatient about that. Okay, Soviet Union has annexed Tuvan. Okay, now I got 2 more countries in their faction, and which means I can't see the border, but I do know that the AI is sort of border obsessed in its defensive, and that's, there were a lot of units. Now these few got sort of trapped over here, but all the rest of the units, don't know what's happened to the Soviet army. There were still lots of units, and a lot of them had been shattering and sent back to various wherever their capital is here. So and things like that, but so I don't know what's happened to all their units, whether they figured they, with their amount of resources or ICs, and then the change in the laws, you know, percent of, you know, domestic versus they're coming there, so these guys stop going here and they come back up this way. You know, percent of to civilian goods versus military goods or whatever. And they figured they couldn't make enough supplies for them. Maybe they dismissed them. I don't know. If you're wondering about the noise, maybe you can hear it outside. Water, people are doing something. Oh, this thing, okay. This is another one of those I've since decided I'm not going to do next time. Maybe a good idea. Black Ice people get a hold of a lot of good ideas, but just in practice it doesn't necessarily work well. Or at least for me, it's breaking immersion. That way, if you don't remember or didn't watch the first episode or so, I didn't do the U unit that you sort of go through the sort of role-playing of what your parents were like and what you did before this whole thing. It just breaks immersion for me. And again, I am not one of these type of people that think that or this thing shouldn't exist. I'm happy if they exist so long as, because they call it, Truppenplatz or whatever because of this. I'm fine if they exist, and I'm really now. They were making some noise. I was waiting for them to get done. Now they're making more noise, as you're hearing. I'm sorry. I just needed to make episodes and couldn't wait any longer. Which now means persistently this is going to be there, so it's pissing me off. Okay, where was I? Oh, so long as you can sort of say no to some of these type of things, like the U unit and Truppensbungsplatz setup. And again, I guess I just don't see, I don't know. How, maybe I'm using this one wrong. But as long as you can opt out, I'm happy that they're there. As long as you can say no. Advanced education investment. Okay, yes, and we are continuing to have what's in their nation. Right, okay. Yes, we are stopping that. And extra wide tracks. So that's what we were waiting for. I knew it was something like that. Structural. To a tank. To improve our armor designs. We're going to do both light and heavy because we have a lot of light armor still. Nav tactics advance. And that one, I think we're going to stop for now. And that one we're going to switch over to the light infantry branch upgrade. How are we doing on all of our nothing's happening right now, so we got to get through some of these other units. That's the 18th, so just a few days away. Just 5, but that's a lot longer. Yes, this is infuriating right now. We're changing the temporary name of the show. Angry Gamer Plays Hearts of Iron 3. We're putting these out here to deal with various. Didn't want to overload any one airbase, but we're overloading a few of them. Come to some mega overload. Okay, well, you guys joining this attack. Romania, we would give them fuel for money. Certainly, you can have fuel. We got plenty of fuel. Or Germany. Germany's known for having plenty of fuel on World War II. Okay, good. You made it in there. Got up. Okay, 4-engine transport plane prototypes have advanced. That's good. Our gigants are getting bigger gants. Heavy bomber prototypes. We only have like 3 of those. Sort of why I'm low prioritizing them. Okay, Special Forces branch, which will help a lot of those different types of units. Oh, and we have more research points or leadership points because of our advanced education system kicked in. Okay, so we can go up 2 more projects. Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. We're going to kill submarines. See, Germany's biggest problem, of course, is, as well known in World War II, is killing submarines. Because there were role reversals here. I hope everyone is sort of aware of. And if you notice here, we are sinking some transports. Not many. And I think that is partly due to that most of the, I think if we were to click over to it, we gutted Britain's transports. I'm thinking most of these transports, maybe not all, but most of them are America. Sending like supplies to here. There's our Air Force with the bad counter image over it. So I think we're doing pretty well now over Britain. As you can see, we've got a lot of interceptors. Okay, now you guys, we'll send in you guys. Now you're going to support in Totenkopf, Alt Totenkopf, and the other light infantry support that. Commando training advanced. Okay. Commando training. Okay, so we're 1940 on that organization. We've got a fair number of those, but not huge. Let's switch over to mountain unit training. That gets mountain units of various types, ski units, improvements, pack artillery. Okay, yeah. There we go, we'll do that. Just got this unit. I think that's this unit. Is this what I'm thinking it is? No, it's not the Schmidt Brigade. What is the Kampf Group Brigade? I don't know if I'm going to let it disband. Look, Hearts of Iron and cheating and achieving things, and has recently posted by Oh My God, the I think main lead developer, continuing now with Hearts of Iron 3. Still, I do notice Panzeroo does still periodically show up in the forum for Hearts of Iron 3. So he hasn't given up all interest. We still have some units left over here. Yeah, and some of these guys are just parked here just because I haven't quite honestly, it's just I haven't decided with these. Do I put them out here? And part of the problem for long term out here is supply. We are building more infrastructure, but is supply, and is the next push going to be versus the Soviets? Or we're going to have a big hard fight in Britain that will want to use them, or you know, which way to go? And so that's part of the reason they just are sitting here. There it is, I think. Yes, let's see. Well, we haven't really used this one, but I'm going to say no. I should probably build some support units for it. It would be really cool. Okay, just we're going to add the letter A. We're going to add the letter A. And get back to my self-justification for this, because I am being watched by you people. Why I want to and willing to do this. Conf groups were temporary units, sort of by their nature, within Germany. They were there's no one such thing as this is what a conf group was. A conf group or battle group was just a an ad hoc by its nature, as opposed to, oh well, this is a regiment or this is a battalion or a company or you know, I'm not even going to try to get into the SS, you know, Standarten or whatever, you know, I did a little bit there. It's something other than a standardized formation within the German army. It is something other than that. And they, which I don't really think this shows well, but there was a great gambit of stuff. Sometimes they were very much a mix-matched formation that would form because of an emergency. And so, like that, they might have an organization tote battalion of you know, don't even would sort of function as infantry, but are just guys with rifles. They know how to shoot them. They've had, you know, maybe what we would consider basic training to use rifles and in combat, but they are not a combat outfit. They're not a unit that is trained and experienced and you know, long-term training as a unit in a combat formation. They're just somewhere between because units varied in size, you know, in practical sense, varied in size. So it's something larger than a company and probably smaller than a whole battalion, or whatever of organization tote troops or rad troops or something like that is what I'm sort of thinking of. You know, a local, you know, that there's a partisan outbreak here, and okay, you know, so oh, we've got that. Oh, we've got this Luftwaffe anti-aircraft battery here. Well, they could be useful. Oh, we've got you know, a Speer Corps truck unit. Well, they can tow the anti-aircraft battery and move this stuff. And oh, we have this tank depot for a division. You know, the sort of where their tanks get knocked out and tanks break all the time. You know, automotively, all the time, and they are all the time recovered whenever possible. If they are completely knocked out, you've seen photographs of where, you know, the tank itself is sort of blown apart and the turret sitting upside down 30 feet away. That's come in and hit the ammunition and done a catastrophic explosion. Well, you might be able to pull off, I don't know, some of the drive wheels, the track links, and some of that, and reuse them in the field. But most of the pieces there just go get scrapped, you know, for their steel value. And they, generally speaking, when they had time, would recover those. This is why a lot of the stuff you are being found today, being pulled out of bogs and rivers and whatnot in Russia or other places, just because they sort of got buried and forgotten, and people are finding them still. But they're not left for days, you know, post-immediate World War II. They were all over, like Western Europe and presumably Eastern Europe, because it just took time to collect all this stuff. But when in combat, most units, they get knocked out. A lot of the vehicles can be repaired. They can put a patch over the hole that the anti-tank round went through, and they can repair bits and pieces of it and put it back into function. Others just simply, they've mechanically broken and need repair. So they have a depot somewhere behind the front doing that stuff for a division. And so there's a few tanks there, and presumably a few tank crewmen there. And so, okay, well, that's now formed a tank core to a conf group A. And, you know, they sort of get all these different kind of stuff together and go out and fight this. And a lot of times, they're not very good, to be quite honest with you, because they're not trained as a coherent unit. Even if they do have a frontline infantry battalion as part of it or something else, they're not, because they're not, this infantry battalion never worked with that tank company because they're from two very different organizations. They're not, you know, just regular infantry but with a panzer division, you know, that have trucks or something, sort of know how to work that. No, these are just regular infantry that never worked with a panzer. So I know I'm going a bit long-winded, but so they've never coherently worked together as units. So they're not very good. But other times it wasn't quite an emergency. It was yes, ad hoc. Sometimes they were trained together, sometimes they weren't. Trying to remember one for the Battle of the Bulge situation here. One of the conf group's SS unit that went forward first, it was put together from several different units to do so. And it did really well. Because it was sort of an elite formation that was done, and that's sort of what these sort of represent. And so I agree, because if I could build them, our players could build them, every division would have a conf group as part of it, and whether you'd call it a division or not, but you put a bunch of other supporting arms to it, and you have that. So this is, but I want to keep, so they happen by events, so we have just a few of them, but I want to keep them instead of disbanding them. And I sort of kind of think, because I can't create them, you know, I can't, and we're going to come in here, and we're going to, since it's a SS unit, we're going to give it, it doesn't need a headquarters because the conf group itself supplies the headquarters function. What was the other unit with it there? And it's just been sitting here because I haven't known which direction to send it. Okay, it has a basic infantry component here. So, oh, what am I doing? I'm in the wrong damn thing again. Okay, so we have infantry. We have that. What sort of support? We're gonna get transport from some other mechanized forces. I want to give it reconnaissance, so start production on a reconnaissance brigade. Might as well make it an armored car one. I don't intend to make this an uber sized unit. I want to keep it mobile, so let's give it Panzer artillery. Probably would have done the rocket if we had the mobile rocket yet, but we don't. Or you know, motorized rocket. Because we already have a bunch of these guys, the half-track sitting around. And so we're going to give it motorized pioneers so that it gets across rivers fast. And because I want these before all of these things to be done, which will delay our infrastructure. But because of that, and because of things, I wanted this unit, now that I'm sort of reminded of it, in Western Europe, to be part of my SS army here. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. We have the... Oh, I did that to my screen. I'll be back looking at it in a second. Again, sorry about the noise. Okay, we have this. Yeah, we're going to detach Simon from it. Okay, now we're going to remove Kepler from this. No leader. Okay. Now we're going to take this, the 6th SS Panzer Army. It does have a 6 SS Panzer, but I don't know if they would have used that. It is a better unit because it has the artillery regiment and whatnot. Give them Kepler. And maybe we should move Hauser up to that instead of... Wrong unit. We're going to send that away. We're going to send you guys away. I don't know where. Well, let's send you down here so we can use you for your anti-partisan activities. But now we have a better... Oh, and I think there's one more. HQ, yes, we also have this. And we're going to also, oh well, this guy here. We're going to leave this attached, but we're going to remove Simon from there, and we're going to remove you, and we're going to add you to the 3rd, is it? No, not the 3rd. 7th. Gotta remember these things. 7th. Okay. And here we will add back in Simon. Forget which divisions he commanded. He's now a corps commander here. So there's our SS Army. Vinking 3 Schwer Panzer Abteilung that are almost like divisions. They're very, and then Hitlerjugend. And they're not quite because that's a little bit more than we have. This was just this Panzer Corps here, Fab Corps, and oh no, that's that. No, okay, that's man, I'm reading this wrong. We got here with these guys, Polizei, Hohenstaufen. This is what Nordland and Frundsberg and these Palavala guys, just an infantry division. It's sort of motorized. Then we have Grill here with Goetz von Berlichen, Reichsführer SS, Liebstandart, and Totenkopf. And Simon down here with Schmidt Brigade. So this is our current SS Army, or Waffen SS Army, I should say. Not quite yet an army group or anything, but yes, you can have metal. We want money, you can have metal. I got more metal than I know what to do with metal-wise. We've back to production? No, because we've added those support. We give them energy, yes. No. You're doing great things, but in the wrong places. Italy. Vichy enforced conquer on Liberia. Okay, cool. So we have, through them, taken their capital. They get that. Okay, well, that's alright. Wouldn't have been probably much. How much would it have been if we got this? 2.5. How do you get 2.5? I don't know. I thought they had to be full for the base numbers. Okay, Speer launch the Speer program. Sorry. I'm just my connector for my plug to my monitor. If I touch it bad, it turns the power off to it. Okay, launched the Speer program. In May 44, Speer believed that further streamlining of armament industry, increased working hours of its staff, the almost complete discontinuation of civilian production and business, and the strict prioritization of armaments plans for the Wehrmacht, Kriegsmarine, and Luftwaffe would enable yet another Rüstungswunder, armaments miracle, to provide the Führer with the war materials to meet the soon-to-be expected Allied Second Front and finally beat back the Soviets. He again toured Germany and allied with the Minister of Propaganda Goebbels to mobilize all mental and material reserves of Germany's home front to increase armaments production. The plan foresaw that production of small arms should increase by 100%, tanks by 73%, trucks and vehicles by 26%, batteries, motors, and fuels by 74%, as well as 20% more ammunition by December 44. The first monthly production indicators were surprisingly positive. However, the losses of summer 44, the huge territorial retreats, and the dramatically increasing Allied bombing campaign finally broke the base of Germany's war economy and Speer's armament effort in late 44. And see, I think this is an interesting thing, and I read Speer's book many years ago, would recommend it, but do realize it's a self-justification of Speer on many levels, and a glossing over of his participation, willingness, whatever you want to call it, in war crimes, particularly in using not only forced labor, but forced labor or slave labor under atrocious conditions, basically starvation type conditions. So he was willing to do evil things, and did not. I think at best he was trying to keep workers alive that were working under those conditions longer, purely for the production elements. He bought into the regime. He was a Hitler loyalist, a Hitler fanatic. He got under Hitler's spell early on and became a friend, a buddy of Hitler, and he bought into it. I think Hitler had an evil core at his center. I think Speer was mesmerized by it and did evil things. That does not excuse or justify his evil things. Notice I haven't called him an evil person, because he got, he succumbed to it, to evil. If he was in a different system, I don't think he would be wanting to pursue those things. So I guess that's sort of what I say. I don't want to whitewash him. I don't want to be part of the Speer was really a good guy. Notice I'm not saying he's a good guy, but I don't know that he was a Hitler or a Reinhard Heydrich who would, let's go murder a few Czech towns because of something, or that kind of personality. to the best of my understanding, again, maybe because I've read his books, or his book and its self-justification, including read stuff that was very much poking holes in his book too, so, and his personality. So it just, yeah, that's sort of my, again. But what is interesting is, there's two facets. Complete discontinuation of civilian production in businesses. Okay. That can't last, for one. And two, I don't know what was going on that they would need to discontinue civilian production from. Like in the US, they completely discontinued production of civilian automobiles, or cars. Trucks, I don't know. I know they converted a lot of the different models of trucks or factories to produce military trucks, and some of them are based on civilian models. The sort of, you're all familiar with the Long Range Desert Group, Britain's, group. Their early vehicles before they got the Willys Jeep, and I think Long Range Desert Group continued even after the Jeep was out there, where the SAS almost exclusively used the Jeep because they were a bit later to the show. Was a Dodge Chevrolet truck that had the top of the cab cut off. If you look at it with the cab on it, it looks like a pickup truck, which what it was. It was a pickup truck, sort of, a late 1930s American pickup truck, and a long line of American pickup trucks that are continuing to this day. And that's all, they just cut the cab off of it. Oh, they put desert tires on it and other stuff, and they actually made a bunch of them in the factories. There's some shots of either from the Canadian production or American production of them that were shot here. The early ones were found locally and converted to that. But once they sort of figured out what they needed, they got some that basically rolled off the production line in that configuration, spray painted tan, made without the sort of upper part of the cab, the roof and the cab and the windshield, all made without that, and shipped over to them. Because the American Jeep did not show up until after the U.S. got into the war, or very early, and it was like a 30 or 60 day wonder that they literally, I think it was like in 30 days, they committed to design and have this Jeep design and starting production that fast. But it was right around it, because it may have been before. I know I may often see in movies like Pearl Harbor, some guys are riding around the Jeeps. Maybe that was in 40 before, in 41 before the America got in, but I think it was after. Again, I'm not always good on this, but but that means sometime all the way through 1940, Italy enters the war. Before the fall of France, Italy enters the war. So all the way through that, and well into 1941, before the British ever see an American Jeep showing up for their use here, so that they needed to use the pickup trucks, and so they were, remove the doors and remove the roof, partially to lighten them up, partially to for desert usage kind of thing. So but basically that's still a civilian vehicle. That isn't a in its standard form a high mobility off-road kind of vehicle. It was sort of made to do, and so that did continue into production, and you can see both like Canadian troops, I think some British troops I've seen, and American units, in the French, campaign after D-Day, using that vehicle without, with its cab, with, in a more conventional sense. So, but all passenger cars stopped. So there are 1942 model passenger cars. My parents collected cars from the 30s primarily, but also other periods. I sort of know about some of the stuff. So there are 1942 production cars because America starts producing the 1942 model before 1942, and we only went into the war, and we were heading, most of industry was heading for a peacetime economy in December 7th. So they had already had production, but they're very rare cars in that, you know, they were made in their hundreds or very few thousands at the end of 1941 and maybe very early 42 before you actually get all the industrialization and everything else. So the factories are just still going and turning out these last few cars, and within months they're stopping all civil, domestic, non-war related domestic, you know, so car production, you know, and then you get some of the 1942 type model vehicles did sort of continue as some staff cars briefly for a while, just to make a bunch of those for military use, kind of thing like that for the government. But they had stopped all that. But, you know, I don't know, civil clothes, you know, shoes for the civilian population, things like that were still going on in America. And so we know that, at least I know, I should say, that up until the early, you know, late 41 problems with the Russian counteroffensive, again, sorry for the noise, Germany very much was trying to maintain a full civil economy because the population was not supportive of a war with France, and Germany wanted to say, hey, things aren't going to be so bad during this war with France. And then once the war with France was over, it was, hey, the war mostly is over, let's continue civilian production, of course. So that was going on very heavily. So the first program I understand, but that they're still doing, you know, just what civil production was still going that needs to be canceled. That's one interesting thing. The other thing is increased working hours of its staffs. I presume for that meaning of the armaments industry, not Speer's staffs. That they hadn't already in the earlier program, you know, the 1942, because it sort of starts in 42, the 1942 program, that they hadn't turned, and again, I read the book, and it was probably almost 30 years ago, because I was in my teens when I read the book. Still have it on my shelf. Just haven't read it in a long time. I actually got an audio, I acquired, shall we say, an audio version of the book too. I haven't listened to it yet. Again, because I do have a job that does allow me to listen to books while I'm doing other things. So and I sort of have wanted to not take the time to sit and reread it, but listen to it again. Just to learn good things to make events from, mostly. But that they hadn't turned over, at least, you know, things like small arms, tanks, trucks, aircraft, or whatever, to 24/7 factories. If they hadn't already by 44 as standard practice, to 24/7 factories. Now to do that, obviously you can't work everybody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah, people will die without sleep. You can't do that. Even if you're doing slave labor, you can't do that. You have to give them time to sleep. And it is best for their long-term morale. Because it's one thing, oh, we got to do, you know, that like when they were rushing to get the battleships refloated and usable after Pearl Harbor, they were, and then another couple of times when some carriers came in barely functional into Pearl Harbor to get them back going out, and sometimes they were going back out barely functional. You know, obviously, like there's the Arizona, which is still down there. Some of the battleships were really badly destroyed from the Pearl Harbor attack, and I don't know right offhand. Which others just had some holes poked into them and sunk, meaning that they were mostly there. They just needed to be raised, you know, raised back up. You know, moved to a dry dock, getting all the stuff out, repaired, and they could go back out. So it's one thing to say for, I don't know, a few months to have people working 7 days a week, you know, as maximum effort. You know, yes, they got to sleep, but maximum effort. But at some point, you need to give people breaks to keep long-term morale and efficiency up. Because if you just, oh, how happy the workers are, doesn't matter, we got to win the war. Well, long-term, you're going to lose the person's functionability in an effective manner. So you've got to have a weekend off of some sort, or at least a day off or whatever. So you can't run a person either 7 days a week or ever functionally and get his best performance out of it. And you can't run him for 24 hours a day for any long periods of time. So you have to develop a system that has multiple shifts. At a minimum, I would say, long term, would be, I don't know, a 12-hour shift. That would be 2 of them. And then if you don't shut the factories down on the weekends, having a part-timer there for just 2 days, that would be inefficient labor. So maybe going to a, instead of a 5-day work week, a 4-day work week, and just sort of rotate through that. And but I don't know, and have people off or something, and try to work that through, to have some days off or whatever. But so, and that's sort of hard to do, 12 hours, and again, long term. More practical, 10 hours. So you could be running the factories 20 hours a day, 4 hours off. Okay, I sort of get that. It's not a 24/7 factory, but 2 shifts. Or do 3 8-hour shifts. Now you need the labor. Now, of course, and we've talked about many times, Germany's labor needs. And some stuff, well, I don't know, let's say trucks. You can get in less reliable labor, shall we say. You don't want to have sabotage or whatever, or just carelessness on, I don't know, fighters, say. You want those to be high quality. But Germany was able to acquire labor other than slave labor. Now, some of it may be conscripted. Conscripted is different than slave. You know, conscription is a soldier. You're paying a soldier. The conscripted labor generally can have time off from his job, like we're saying, not 7 days a week. Though he may be, and they conscripted labor in Britain too. Realize this, okay? In Britain, every man during certain ages had to have a war-related job, basically. It just, now it could be your local butcher, because it needs to feed the population who have people that work in a factory, okay, or a farmer. I mean, it's not everybody in a munitions job, but nobody was not working. And I know at least single women were also ultimately conscripted. They either needed to get a war-related job, could be the Women's Land Army, working out in the farms, or the ATS, the Auxiliary Territorial Service, maybe, or whatever, but that's sort of the females, and a lot of those women were like ambulance drivers, or flak gun type helpers, or other sort of military support, but in domestic Britain type things. You would be drafted into those if you volunteer into those, or you had to go work in a war-related industry or whatever. So this is, even Britain is conscripting labor. So we're not talking evil Nazi conscription. We're just saying, hey, everybody's going to be working. If we do need civil supports for the civil society. But beyond the minimum of that, we need everybody working, so you can conscript labor. And sometimes the labor is either in regions like, say, the Czechia nowadays, as opposed to Slovakia, and that's what I'm trying to determine, that may not be terribly fond of the Germans, or think of themselves as ethnic Germans, or maybe may not want to be part of Germany. So they're not Germans that are buying into the system, but they're being conscripted labor. As opposed to like, hey, I'm refusing to work, I'm just going to, sit at home. And sometimes the conscripted labor was like local, and building the Atlantic Wall from local labor type sources of French, but they're nowhere near the idea of slave labor. So there is a conscripted labor. Now, how much legally can you, in laws of wars and things, do change over time? but can you conscript subject populations as opposed to your own population? Does vary. So you can conscript labor. Now, so in my opinion, anything that's a critical function, small arms, tanks, aircraft, you should get maximum effort out of those factories. The only limiting factor should be resources, steel, or coal for the power, or coal for the forging furnaces or something like that to make elements of it, or other sort of resources. That should be the only limiting factor of the factory. It should be up and going. Now, how many factories can you have? How much expansion? So you need the labor, whether it's women working, whether it's men that are just a little older for combat, or combat age men. So it's a competition. It's a fight for labor between the army and that. But you need those working. And it's just surprising me that I'm reading here that they hadn't got 100. They could still increase working hours in the armament industry at this time. That they hadn't already set up programs for more shifts. And yes, most even reasonably technical jobs you can train an average person to do over time. Some people will take longer training, and this is why you don't immediately go from 1941 secret and planning invasion, summer, the Soviet Union, things are going good at home, to 1942, every small arms factory is running 24/7 necessarily. It may take a while to ramp it up to it, but that you hadn't already planned on that, I'm surprised. I know I've talked a lot about this, but production interests me. Again, there's Speer. That is Xavier Schwartz. Sort of Speer's nemesis, if you will. Where is he? I think he should be here. Oh, yes. Is that Xavier? Oh, Deutsch. Not Schwartz. Deutsch. There is a Schwartz. There is a Xavier Schwartz. He was, I don't think a Gauleiter, but he was a major functionary in the NSDAP. But he's Xavier Deutsch. There he is. There he had a sort of a little Hitlerite type mustache. He eventually more or less takes over Organization Todt once it's just inside of Germany, and Speer is sort of assigned, still head of the armaments program, still technically head of Organization Todt, but he's running Todt by that time, and Speer is supposedly by that time supposed to be blowing up Germany as it retreats by that point. But so he basically Deutsch takes over like all the underground building programs for. There's like they converted one mountain into a ME-262 factory, and he's doing all that kind of stuff because he had a lot of experience building the West Wall. That's why he's currently here in charge of Einsatzgruppen Organization Todt's Einsatzgruppen West, because that's building sub-pens, the big concrete things. So he's really experienced in organizing up and building all that. So that's why he's sort of taking over that kind of building in Germany once they're losing too much over here and that. And so, but he's a sort of I think that maybe he might be described as a Todt, Todt the guy loyalist or something. But he and Speer did not get along, and we're sort of that. So, see, we could do this. We'll gain national unity, lose dissent. Now we're perfectly good on those, so we don't care. That's not. Get a 10, mostly 10 bonus to a bunch of stuff. Lose metal and supplies. Don't care about that. We get Speer program until 44, which reduces manpower. I do care a little bit about that. Reduces IC, but get airspeed build, armor speed build, naval speed build by 2%. Manpower really isn't right now an issue too much, but again, they're at least acknowledging that, or it's 0.2%. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, but definitely not 20%. Okay, it's 0.2%, so that's almost nothing. Okay, but that's good that the person who's designed this is taking into account. I think this is GGA, but I'm not absolutely sure. I think it's revolver held, but it may be just black ice. But 5% reduction, but 2% speed. And we are, I know we're sort of overly looking at this, but we are building a lot of air, and we're building a lot of naval, and that takes time. And the armor, but we're not really building much armor. We are going to be building more of the infrastructure. These guys are left here to sort of do eventually, where we are building some stone units. They got a little bit of armor attached to them. I was going to sort of say no, but well, let's see. U-boat Flotilla 37 is July 10th. I don't know why there's a reduction in ICs. I don't understand that part of this. I sort of get the idea that you're paying for it. The metal I definitely get because that's resources paying for this. Yeah, we're gonna go for it, but I don't really get that. What was that, July 10th for 37. How do we see the change effect? Still July 10th. Okay, well, the effect may have to wait a little bit. Or 37. Let's see. Let's wait today out and look at it. Well, we've got some more bombers and others out here sort of operating. So let's load these guys up. They've been attacked by somebody? I don't think there's anybody around here to attack any enemy territory anymore. I think they're just still getting back. Let's look at revolt risk. It's mostly green, though. We do have a lot of our troops parked in here, so let's come down to here. Oh, we'll just transport down here. That's good. Yep, we're going along the coast, and we may bump into it, things, but I do hope. Okay, now we've gone to the next day. Let's look. Oh, production. Okay, the 37th, July 4th. So, in this case, with this thing, it reduced it by 6 days. I don't know if that's worth it. Or 5% reduction for a year. Or for until the end of the year, or whatever part of the year. Don't know if that's because we'll also lose that production bonus at the end of that time. Strategic rocket. Okay, so got that. Secret strategic rocket. We can now do improvements to the strategic rocket, but we're not going to do that at the moment. What I think we're going to do is, we could have before, but I'm just partially waiting for 1944 because these are at 10, so they take a long time to research anyways, and doing them earlier makes them even longer to do. Okay, guided bomb, medium bomber, self-attack, guided missile. Let's start with the missile. you guys, well, you guys come up to here. We're not all on one port. Well, I probably talked a little too much, but I hope it was enjoyable. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and also, if you would, like the videos so that they get more visibility. And of course, I really love hearing from you. Please post questions, comments, suggestions, corrections. If I'm getting some of this stuff wrong, please correct me. I would like to know that, because I want to learn too, but you also will help. Now, it is impractical for you as a viewer to go back to too many episodes to look at all the comments. Sometimes even like early in this series, I had an interesting discussion today with somebody about freedom in healthcare, and my, of course, position is the less government, more freedom. His position is better healthcare. People don't have to worry about paying for it, so they have more freedom. I mean, you can see that discussion back there, but that's on the one about the on the episode where I talked about the organization of the Reich, and you have that sort of little map thingy in it. But it is impractical. Now, he's watching through the series later, I gather, so impractical for you to watch all that. But do look back a day or two on the episodes, because there's a lot of discussion that may come along after it, and just, I would suggest, come and look at and read the discussions, because sometimes if you're, the first handful of people watching it, obviously no one, maybe unless you do, may have made any comments, and I've not replied to any, but there's often very interesting discussions, and I would love to have you come in and discuss with the other people. And just because I'm in there giving answers doesn't mean I don't want or welcome other people, whether it's, like we're saying, a political discussion about, levels of government and freedom and whatever like that are sort of philosophical, because neither of us were he was promoting up the idea of single-payer universal health, but not of a specific how to do that system, just that it should be done. And I was free market system would be better with minimum, not no, but minimum government support, because I even stated in there, I do want, for the neediest people out there, I do want some government healthcare options paid for by the government, some, but not, mostly free market, but a a safety cushion. So those philosophical arguments over any practical one. But if we're discussing, I don't know, also had a nice interesting input on the role of women in combat on an episode just a few days ago that you might want to, somebody's real world experiences in Afghanistan with it, you might want to come in and read. So sometimes it's like that, or if it's technical discussions or details of World War II and battles and history, you might also, come in and share your views and thoughts as well, not necessarily support or me or anything like that. I'm just looking to hear your views. I'm going to give you mine. I want to hear yours, what you think universal health care is good because of X, and I'll say no, and we can agree to disagree, but we both presented our views. It's not that I'm going to convince you to agree with me, or you're going to convince me to agree with you. It's we're presenting our views, and people can well-reasoned arguments for both sides of an issue, of why something is good or bad, and that, I think, is good. And hey, look, even if you're never going to agree with me on something like that, at least you've heard my opinions. Maybe you don't think I'm a monster for not wanting the government to take care of everybody, and your views are actually stronger because you've had to think about and articulate why you think something is good or better than X. I mean, your Y is better than my X, and why? And you now have your opinions better thought out. And that, because Vincent, who has been a long time viewer here, often asks me very provocative questions or things about Germany in World War II, and it makes me sort of, well, how to explain it. You know, I sort of know it intuitively from everything I've read and watched and whatever, but to try to put it into words helps me understand the argument better. So I know it does that as well. So for me, so I presume it would for you too. So that's why I really enjoy these discussions with thoughtful people. Don't need to be the greatest expert on the topic. So please jump into those conversations, give your opinion, and just because I don't think I hammer people, I just, you know, go, nah, I think you're wrong because of X. And, you know, and we can just leave it there, or we can continue the debate. But so it's not who wins or loses, but just come in and participate. So do sort of look back a little bit on the videos at times to see what sort of bubbles up after the, you know, the first 24 or 48 hours videos up. I think many of you would enjoy those discussions as well. So see you next time for more Hearts of Iron.